agenda. Is there any problems with the agenda and questions? We can have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're good on getting these agendas. Okay, then I think, is going to tell us about what we're doing.
Yeah, so just to kind of get started, one thing that we wanted to talk about, as we're getting into the big discussions of land use zoning and, really focusing on the zoning of Region 4, please keep in mind that these meetings are for the SAC. These are SAC workshop sessions, and the input is to come from the SAC. There will be opportunity for public input given at the end of the meetings as for the agenda. But just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. Additionally, one big thing for the SAC members to keep in mind are the ethics and conflict of interest. I know this was we talked about this a couple of times, but it was brought to our attention that we should talk about it maybe one more time right before we get into the zoning conversation. So a couple of months ago, we asked you all to fill out a conflict of interest form. We have most of you who have completed it. To my knowledge, it's not a required form, but it is something highly encouraged. The ethics training that you guys completed were required, and you all completed that, so thank you for that. But this, if you take a look at the first bullet point, just kind of look over that for a second. And if you haven't filled out the conflict of interest form, and this applies to you, I would highly encourage you to fill that out. It's just kind of a way to kind of protect yourself as well as protect the group and the process as a whole. And moving along, like OPZ, Office of Planning and Zoning, we're not going to be the arbiter. We're not going to be here to settle disputes. That's not our job. Our job is to lead these meetings and to really focus in on the content of these meetings. If you have any questions or concerns, there is a contact with the Secretary of the County Ethics Commission on there. I would highly encourage you to reach out with anything you may have. And the last bullet point is very, very important as well, is that given the fact that the SEC is only advisory in nature, it has no regulatory or legal authority or effect, any improper conduct discovered at any point prior to the final adoption of the county council should be reported to the county council, and they will make any potential decisions that they can be appropriate. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, there is actually. I have a copy for anybody that wants it. I'll just leave it here. Because you may not want it printed. It's pretty small print, but it came from the Ethics Commission, Arundel County Ethics Commission. I just thought if you wanted to know a little bit more in detail what we're going to talk about, I just think it's really a good time to talk about. I had a lawyer who also I knew from other parts of my life, which is politically involved, call me about a certain project. And of course, we didn't talk to her about a certain project because I didn't feel that was appropriate. We aren't even in that stage. So then I started thinking, we really need to be able to talk to anybody. We can talk to developers, we can talk to developers. We have to listen to people. Not that you're talking to somebody, but if somebody has a financial interest in the project, they may be a little more persistent than if somebody's a neighbor. They just have to kind of think, is this a general idea or is this somebody's specific project? And you can ask them, you have a project, because we do need to listen to people who want to talk to us. But I think outside of this meeting, it's a little awkward to have somebody call you up and try to get me. Anybody else have that kind of problem? Okay. All right. Just be warned that if there's a family relationship, an occupational relationship, friendship of some kind, and somebody approaches you about, how do you feel about X? I don't know. Should we talk about how you feel about X? If they say about a high rise next door to a prison, I mean, I don't think we should be entertaining this kind of question out there, but I don't know how we avoid it. Anybody else? Idea? Good.
I think our job is to use our lived experience and expertise to make the best informed decisions on the SAC, and in that position, our job is, as you said, to listen to everyone. And further, I think that also means that our opinion, our personal opinion on things is not really an important matter of discussion, because it shouldn't just be based on our personal opinions. So that's fine.
With that, anyone else?
Technically, on the boards that I'm on, I get approached about future development questions, property to be developed. Both Cape St. Clair, Rutland Council, people come back and say, well, what happens if we redid zoning on this or redid zoning on that? I guess in theory, that can put you into conflicts. They don't have a personal interest financially in it, so I having consulted attorneys when I had read that document and sent it over, didn't see where I had a personal interest in it, but
Seems like
the boards that I'm on may have an interest in blocking it or changing its eventual outcome.
Well, I don't know if you, it depends on the board, but maybe you could just tell the board to have that conversation, just so they know. I don't know. I'm not sure. Things get a little.
I don't agree. I mean, I keep
Yeah.
an attorney on the retainer to ask the questions at all times. So integrate my business into it.
I mean, very huge, a huge change in land use. And it's gonna benefit some people and not gonna benefit other people. Like where they want to, they don't want that there. So there's competing interests. We have to listen. I mean, as Emma pointed out, use our experience and what we're hearing, do the best for the community. Okay.
If you're ever worried about it, if something, someone approaches you with something and you're worried about how it's respond, I can say that Gina from the ethics office is very responsive. One time I had a question about a different course, and she got back to me right away, and gave us some different options about how, we could proceed. So definitely get that email down. You feel like that you might be asking yourself.
No other concerns right now, but I think it's good, you know, have somebody to go to, if you don't know. So, we can.
I think that's the point. Whenever in doubt, people ask the question, right? It doesn't hurt to ask your question. One other thing too is if you are curious if you filled out the conflict of interest form or not, I have copies. I have a list of who has and who hasn't. I haven't called anybody out, nothing like that. But if you are curious or you're interested in signing it again, then just let me know. I can have a conversation. Other than that, I think that's all we had for the ethics conversation. So we're going to pass this over to Spencer, and he's going to discuss about the holding capacity.
Okay.
You controlling it?
Yeah. I can-
Can't stand very long with her plate, but. Sit up there. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the holding capacity analysis. This is something I'm on the long range planning team. My name is Spencer. I've been to a few of the meetings here. I primarily work with Region 2, but I also work on the county-wide team. And this is one of our projects that we do for the county that we're a part of. So basically, a holding capacity analysis provides an estimate of the number of additional housing units that could be built under the existing zoning code and the regulations that we have. You might have heard this before, called a build out analysis or a residential development capacity analysis, but the term that we use for ours is holding capacity, but they're all basically the same thing. So the results are obviously used to report to support our long range planning for land use, roads, infrastructure, parks and rec, to account for the housing. Our methods follow guidance from the Maryland Department of Planning. And we also look at best practices from other jurisdictions. So we look at zoning, development regulations, what our regulated natural features are, and then current land values. And I'm going to go through the steps in a moment briefly, just so you have a broad overview of how we come to the numbers, and then I'll end with showing some high level numbers for the region and the county. So the key steps, first, we identify all the parcels in the county that have development potential. We calculate actual yield of recent development in each zone throughout the county. So we have, there is a maximum number of yield of residential units that could be put in a certain zone, but realistically, it's lower than that in real life. So we actually look at past development in certain zones, and we calculate what the actual yield of housing is for certain zones on average. So then we apply that density to the developable parcels that we came up with, and then we can compare those with growth forecasts and capacity for infrastructure. So it's a lot of words, but I wanted this to be on here so you guys could reference back to it. So I'll go through it as briefly as possible, and feel free to ask some questions. First, we identify the properties that can be developed. We obviously look at vacant land, which is identified based on if the parcel has an assessed value of improvement less than $10,000. We look at redevelopment potential, which is identified based on the assessed value of improvement less than the assessed value of land. So an example here, the property might have an assessed land value of $1 million, but the improvements are 100,000. So, real estate economics would indicate that that property has potential for redevelopment to a higher value. And this is based on best practices from other jurisdictions and from MVP guidance on how we come up with that. Next, we look at subdivision potential. So we look at parcels that are in residential zone districts currently that have a lot size more than double the minimum lot size for that zone. So that means that that parcel has potential to be subdivided in the future if the zoning allows, obviously, so then lastly, we don't look at properties that are owned by federal, state, or local government, assuming that those won't be developed into residential. Any flats that are completely open space or completely floodplain, any that are constrained by recorded conservation easement, ag easements, Maryland Environmental Trust easements, those are taken out. And then we also take out any parcels that are currently in the subdivision review process. So any pipeline project that's already in the works, we don't consider those as being open for development because they're already in the process of development.
Does that include concept plans or sketch plans?
That is a good question. I believe it starts at the sketch plan. So any step in the subdivision review process. I'm not sure about the exact step, but I can definitely follow up with that. So then how do we allocate these units to those potential properties? So first of all, we're looking at any residential zoning district. And then we also look at any zoning district where residential use is allowed by right or the conditional use. So that would be the commercial district. W1 doesn't necessarily apply here because that's only in our kind of our BRAC mixed use, which is out in region 2, and then any of the mixed use and town center zoning districts, we apply these numbers to. We remove any protected natural features. So we remove acres of steep slopes, acres of wetlands and stream buffers from parcels, so that when we apply those numbers, we only use the acres that is developable. And it's just a note that this isn't a site-specific survey. This is just based on our best available data for this model.
Most using GIS.
It's almost all of this model completed in GIS. Yeah, so it's just using our open data, publicly available layers of those things. So then we apply the yield factor. So we go back and we review development over the past so many years. For the numbers that you'll see today, it was 2015 to 2020 we looked at to designate the yields. And like I said before, I explained already, the yield factor provides a lower, more conservative estimate of what actually would be produced in those zones as opposed to the maximum. So this is kind of a disclaimer slide before I get to the actual numbers. So, you know, we as planners, community members, elected officials can look at the holding capacity. And then we can also look at household forecasts and inform land use and zoning. So we can compare the two roughly to see, you know, how should the county change zoning or direct public investments to support different development in different areas. So the holding capacity that I just explained and population forecasts, they shouldn't be really directly comparable. They're not apples to apples. We're comparing apples to oranges. They're not based on each other. They have nothing to do. They have completely separate methodology. But we can still use them as an input of information, but as long as we take that with a grain of salt. So holding capacity looks at current conditions of land and past trends, like we talked about. Forecasts look at trends in population, mainly through employment, to project potential future estimates, potential. So those aren't, they're not goals that we're trying to reach. They're just potential future projections, future estimates that could happen. So these numbers you see here are the current household forecasted for 2040, based on the Baltimore Metropolitan Council's forecast, which is our regional planning agency that we use as, and in Arundel County, we use their numbers. So countywide, obviously, you can see it's about 30,000 additional households added to the county's projected. And then you can see those are our 3 planning regions that we're working on currently. Region 2 out West County, Region 7 is Annapolis Neck, and then Region 4 is Lucy Hall.
You have one question in the question and answer. Do you want to do it now? We'll come back.
I can do it.
So we're going to answer what's the importance of holding capacity in this context.
In the importance of holding capacity, kind of I mentioned a little bit. So basically, we want to use these numbers to kind of, as we get into the zoning portion, which will be, you know, the next handful of meetings. This is just one more piece of information that you guys have to help inform your decisions on how you might change zoning in certain areas or what you might recommend.
Just remembering that phone, if we start letting everybody on the phone make comments, we don't let everybody in until we're ready for comments. I go to check. So
Okay, yeah.
hold the comments unless you're on the SAC until get the public comment.
So here's our holding capacity results as of last year. So countywide, we're projected to grow, or countywide, we have about 40,000. The current zoning, we have the capacity to build that many more units.
That's units, not people.
This is units, yes. So we're kind of comparing households would be a unit, and then the holding capacity would be a unit, so, yeah. So you can see the numbers for 2, 4, and 7, and then one, so kind of some rough math, number of housing units to meet the demand. And remember, this is not comparing apples to apples, it's just a really rough, kind of broad overview to help inform your decision making.
What is the population rate you're assuming, so I don't have to calculate it? Is it like 0.7% like the historical rate?
You know, yes, so
Or-
the population, BMC uses
They're higher.
historical population. Their estimates are actually really driven by employment growth. Because as employment grows, those are, you know, estimating that the household will grow as well. They also take into account, you know, past migration, natural increase, those types of things. I'm not exactly sure what the percentage growth, their estimates, it's a
Okay,
complex model.
my experience at BMC, their growth rate is higher than the reality in Anne Arundel County.
Go ahead.
My question then comes back to, while we're sitting there planning for 2040, there's legislation to allow accessory dwelling units right now in county council, which will have a huge impact on the number of people or residents, or could have a huge impact, depending on how it's facilitated. How does that impact these studies? That if it all gets done before you get to 2040, what's the point of us sitting here?
You mean the holding capacity or the?
No, not the holding
either
capacity. I
one.
realize why you're telling me the holding capacity, but they may run this in people's back. I live in Cape St. Clair right here, right? So we could have 2,300 homes with an ADU in the backyard with 2,300 that fit 1 to 2 people per. And you blow this whole thing out of the water. In building, an actual building versus just a holding capacity. That's just my question. Like, what are you guys doing to account for legislative changes that are happening today?
We're not, I mean, this,
That's what-
our holding capacity results are based on, just the exactly transparent, what I look back there. Ideally, as we move forward and we look past at past development, when those new codes come in, those yields would be incorporated, but I think, until that passes, then we can reevaluate our methodology and try to figure out what we can do. Yeah, I do understand the concern.
Yeah.
Can I clarify one thing? Is this an annual report or is it more of a live document that gets updated more frequently?
It's an annual, we're in the process of updating it right now. We should have new numbers out by the end of this year.
Two quick questions. Do you also attach gross acreage to these numbers? How much gross acreage is involved?
So we have that when we take that developable land, that would be our gross acreage, that would be our developable land. And then we take out the natural features, which makes it a net. And then we use that number to apply the yield to. Does that answer your question?
Well, I would be interested in the growth acres without use factor and all.
Sure.
Back in the last SAC that was done for broadband, there were roughly 2,200 acres that was available for development, using similar methodology that you use. And the second thing is, so after you do all this, so you get the holding capacity, do you then take a look at what is really developable based upon either planned or future water and sewer services?
So no, it's just completely based off of those
Got it.
yields which are passed. And then these numbers can be used to inform future. I mean, I think that's part of the ideal is that this is just one set of numbers that can be used to help inform where our sewer capacity is, with the sewer capacity, those numbers can help inform where we go. I think.
Is there a code requirement that you're supposed to produce this report and give it directly to any one, part of government?
I don't believe so. I'm
Okay.
not 100% sure, but I don't believe it's
So-
mandated
so-
at all.
For example, report which goes to the Maryland Department of Planning, they require that be done every 3 years. Planning Advisory Board has asked us to do it annually.
Okay, but currently, there's no requirement that county council be informed what this document says.
No, but they do receive the annual report that goes to the Maryland Department of Environment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Maryland Department of Planning.
But just I know that lots of places are dealing with the homelessness and not having enough occupancy, and maybe ADU is part of that solution, but when you look at this, how do you figure out the existing problem that we don't have people, housing for people? There's everybody, and that's all we can have, or how do you, or you can't really figure that out?
I mean, I think this is just a number if all of the available land was developed completely. I don't know if that's ideally, I mean, I think that's for you all to decide. I think the question is where you want the development that you're going to put and where you want the growth to be and how you want to put strategies that ensure that it's equitable. That is your.
Well, We've seen statistics of how many people the county thinks need housing that are now here. Kind of a large number. And then we have a number of new residents who came in 2040, and I don't know if that's an overlap. People that need housing now who don't have it versus people who are moving into the area.
The household forecast would be any new household formation. So I'm thinking I'm assuming if someone was homeless, then they would be, and they formed a household, I'm assuming it wouldn't be after that. That is the question. I think it would be, I can follow. Thank you.
More questions, I can go back.
Could you please, I'm sorry, could you please go back to the last slide? I'm having trouble understanding, it seems backwards. If I'm looking at countywide forecast, that we're gonna have 32,000 more family units, households. And we have zoning in place that handles 41,000, then the number of housing units to meet demand would be minus 9,000.
The label. I know what you're doing. I think the label on the bottom column is a little misleading perhaps.
Sure.
It says, right,
Yeah,
Okay.
so region 2 is the only one that has of these shown, it's the only one that has a deficit. So I guess that's kind of what I was getting at here, but I see how you mean that the label is a little misleading.
do you have a general idea? I know you mentioned that you analyze commercial zones and everything too, for those uses. Do you have a general idea of the mix between how much of this capacity is in those allocated to those commercial zones versus the residential?
I'm not sure like percentage wise, but I mean, it's predominantly residential. More so, I think it's in region 2, there's more, but not as much. We're standing anecdotally.
Go ahead.
It's a question, so I didn't see this on there, so you didn't factor rules can impact capacity, how much you do, so that was not factored in, so those are numbers. Certainly, there are factors that could impact capacity.
Yeah, any adequate facility would be.
Do you ever look at maybe like a mall that's failing and think, well, that they're failing, maybe that could be used for something, something like that.
So we look at what zone, but not, we don't go piece by piece and we wouldn't look at a specific part and say this could be that. So it's just we're just looking at the zone and what could be allowed there, looking at past trends and what was put in those zones.
But and if property, let's say the improvements on the property are undervalued in comparison to the land price, that identifies that as a potential for redevelopment. So that's how that would get factored in.
All the reason.
Do you have any like tips that we could use in when we're making these decisions to like keep those extenuating factors in mind that aren't included in this so that we can make sure we're not? Because I feel like that's in like between the school zoning and the other factors that were discussed that aren't included in this, I feel like it could. I don't want to be like making recommendations and the numbers are going to be completely skewed afterwards. So is there a way that we can keep those in mind and be more accurate with the numbers?
So I think, like I said, I think it's important to just keep a grain of keep those in mind as you're looking at these numbers. Like it says I don't know of like a specific way that you could just to know, keep this as one input into the problem. Knowing what I laid out and how it's come up with. I think this is just another piece of information that can help inform along with adequate public facilities, along with the sewer capacity stuff. And I think you all are going to go through some more information before you start the zoning, the conference zoning stuff next meeting too. Sorry, I didn't answer your question, but I think.
Thank you, and we can get a copy of this on the hub.
Thanks, Spencer. Yeah, and this will be on the hub site tomorrow, at some point. I will upload it on there. So we can all have a copy of this. So we are actually pretty ahead of schedule right now for the first time in a while. So if it's okay with Dan and the group, keep going until the reevaluate, maybe half an hour and either the break meeting. Okay, so before we get to kind of, the next portion of the meeting is really gonna kind of give a broad overview of land use, zoning, development policy areas, right? Stuff that's gonna be important in our next couple of meetings, when the SAC, breaks down to groups and really puts, conversations at table. So the next meeting, we're gonna be, around maps, right? We're gonna be talking about zoning, and we're gonna be getting into it, right? So, and the long-awaited zoning conversations are finally happening, right? So, but before we get to that, what is comprehensive zoning? And that's the process we're moving forward, and that's the process that's gonna come out of this region plan. Comprehensive zoning is a procedure for amending the zoning. As per the county code in 18-2-106, if you guys need to take a look at that. For the comprehensive zoning process provides an opportunity for the county to make changes in the zoning in accordance with policies and recommendations in the GDP Plan 2040. And ensure that the zoning is made consistent with the adopted land use plan. And that's important. The zoning has to be consistent with the land use. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. The county may also use the comprehensive zoning process for its own property in order to address an identified community need or county need. So how often is comprehensive zoning occur? Well, this is gonna be the 5th time, right? And the zoning map was first adopted in 1952 in Anne Arundel County. There was a process in the 70s, one in the late 80s, in the 2000s, with the small area plan, and then there was a 4th one in 2011. And then this is our region plan process for the comprehensive zoning. So if we take a look, there's 3 different aspects that the SAC is gonna be able to discuss, and they all play important roles with determining the zoning and how everything kind of aligns. So it's a big puzzle in a sense, right? And it's kind of a layer, kind of imagine maybe an onion type thing, right? And the first layer is gonna be the development policy area. So what is a development policy area? It's an area that provides a sound, predictable framework for achieving the vision and mechanism for informing land use and public facility decisions in the implementation of goals, objectives, and strategies. So what does that mean? Essentially, it's a very broad idea that identifies the county areas that are prime for development and redevelopment, where you can really encourage that kind of stuff, as well as areas where we can maybe preserve different rural or suburban character and natural features of the county. So again, the SAC we'll have these conversations in next meeting. We'll have some development policy maps that you guys have seen before, but we figured you guys can actually have conversations and put your ideas. So the next thing, what land use? What is land? Well, there are actually two categories that we kind of discussed. One is current land use, existing land use, or planned land use. And existing land use is in the county of how land is currently being used, right? It reflects what's currently there. It establishes a reference point for identifying areas suitable for change and redevelopment or areas appropriate for preservation. Planned land use is how the county and residents envision the future use of land to be in order to promote a more desirable outcome that's depicted in an adopted comprehensive plan, such as Plan 2040, through that land use map. So what does all that mean, right? So it's a guide that we will use, that the SAC and the regional plans we use to really just kind of reflect the visions and goals of everything we've kind of discussed, from Plan 2040 to everything that's been discussed these past couple of months with the SAC. It all kind of rolls into one, right? And the plan land use is used as a guide to develop patterns within the county, right? Again, it's the foundation. It's another piece of the foundation, the second layer of that onion, so to say, of the land use zoning development policy area. And then finally, what is zoning? Zoning is a foundational tool used to regulate how land is developed. The zoning includes 2 components, the zoning map and the zoning code. The zoning map classifies land in the county into different zoning districts and where different types of land uses, such as residential, commercial, industrial, etc., are allowed. The zoning code lists the set of uses that are permitted as of right, conditionally, and by a special exception or auxiliary to a business. And I would highly encourage you all to just kind of, I'm not asking you to become pros on the zoning code, because I want to keep my job, right? But please take a look at that between now and our next couple of meetings. Because it's important to understand what kind of commercial district allows what kind of commercial use. Because a land designated for a mom and pop convenience store is going to be much different than the Walmart, right? So just kind of understand, and again, you don't have to be a pro at it. We're here to help. We'll have copies and everything. It'll be fine, but just understand, kind of have a rough idea of what's allowed where.
A really great guide for that is available on the AACO zoning website. They actually walk you through most of the residential zones, commercial zones, industrial and maritime, to tell you what's allowed in an R1, what's allowed in a C3, and it just gives you a really short blurb, and you can probably print that out and read it.
Thanks, Jeffrey. So again, the zoning code also includes a set of bulk regulations, right? So this is what developers and anybody who's trying to build anything will have. This talks about setbacks, lot coverage, if you need any landscaping, that kind of stuff. That's all there for you to really review. And you don't need to look at that. I would highly encourage you to look at the uses of what's permitted. Don't necessarily worry about the 10 or 15 foot setback compared to a 7 or 20, right? But again, do as you want, do as you prefer. So all this information kind of provide, we can see the development policy areas are much more broad. And if you guys can remember the map, and we have a map here actually for you, the development policy areas, it's, we have three here, and then the village overlay. It covers most of the region, right? So it's a very broad idea, a very broad concept, but still very important to how the future of land use and zoning can shape the area. And in Region 4 specifically, the ones that are located here are neighborhood preservation, peninsula, critical corridor, and the village centers, which are the little red kind of dashed lines. All of this is in Plan 2040, all of this is in code. And these are the definitions taken directly from there. I would encourage you to just kind of review this as well. Take a look over it and just kind of understand the purpose of each of these, because these all do hold a very important purpose. And that purpose can help dictate and guide the conversations you all are about to have, as well as the ideas and potential outcomes that the regional plan can have. So the land use, right? There's a few more than three. There's commercial, there's different types of residential. You have residential low, residential medium, residential low medium. There's a little bit of industrial in there, et cetera. Again, we've seen this map before, and you'll definitely see it again in person. Again, I highly encourage you just to kind of take a look over these definitions, right?
Eric, when you say we'll see it again, will we also see the percentage of each one of those different designated land uses? Do you break that down by a region?
Yeah, I can look into that. I don't see why.
Yeah, I think you gave me something early on in the process, acreage.
Yeah, I can look into that. I'm sure if we've done before, we can do it again. So
Could be the same, right?
should be. Again, so yeah, this is a list of all the land use designation from code. Again, I would highly recommend looking at them, take a look over them. Kind of, you don't have to memorize them by any means, but it's good to understand maybe the difference between low density and low medium density versus medium density and high density. That kind of stuff, just so you can understand how your ideas and how your thoughts and your opinions kind of fit into what the existing framework already is. So this right here, this is how you can see the consistency between zoning and land use and how it can play, how zoning can play, where it's consistent, right? I know this is difficult to read. Again, that's why I put it in big, bold, black letters where to find it. Again, this is very important as well, is to really understand what kind of zoning categories and the zoning designations, where they are consistent with the plan land use, because those two go hand in hand. Right, everything is related here, the policy areas to land use, the zoning, but it's very important to produce a document that has the zoning consistent with land, because that is a requirement, it's absolute requirement. They have to be. So please take a look at this plan. So, if is there any questions about that land use zoning? I know, the next meetings, as I mentioned a couple times already tonight, we're gonna be heavily involved in heavy conversations about it. There will be breakout groups, there will be opportunities for, conversations to occur between the SAC members. Staff will be there to help answer any questions, and just kind of help guide that process, right? Next week, March 13th is our next meeting. And I'll talk about that again at the end. But that meeting it's almost required for you all to be in person. The Zoom is not going to be an option. It's going to be very difficult to have any type of broadcasting to from those discussions to a Zoom type format, simply because of how everything is going to be played out. If you guys recall, a couple months ago, we had breakout groups and there really wasn't much of a Zoom component. It's gonna be very, very similar to that, except it's gonna be talking about land use and zoning. And I know that's where a lot of the conversation is. So I highly encourage each of you to please be here in person, or at Suburban Park, I apologize, in person. And you can invite anybody from the public to attend as well. They'll be able to, kind of listen in. But again, the next meetings, plural next meetings, are going to be working sessions for the SAC. These are for you all, provide your input, because this is why each of you were appointed and selected through council process, help guide this comprehensive zoning process, right? Like we all know from the get-go. I don't know how many times you guys have heard of it, pretty much since day one, almost every day I've heard when's comp zoning going to happen, right? Well, it's about to start. So, and it's very important that if you guys really, since you guys won this position, since you guys have won this position, this is where you guys are finally getting to that point, right? So I highly encourage you all to attend, and highly encourage everybody to be here. Okay, so the last big portion of this meeting was to discuss the vision statement. If you want to keep rolling, what we did was, so this is the last time we talked about the vision statement was in November. And this is what we came up with, or this is what we presented to you guys in November. Based on all the comments we heard, based on all the conversations that had happened to that point, and this is what we presented to you at that moment.
Eric, I'm probably overthinking this, and I apologize because I did not see this on the agenda for tonight. And I certainly have not looked at this vision statement since the last time we posted it up like this.
Sure.
But it's a personal opinion. It seems like we have kind of backed into this vision statement, that we've been spending all of our time very hard working on all the different strategies. I personally would like to see that whole menu of strategies and then take our vision statement and say, does this now match with what we've been talking about for the past, several months? Because I could not right now remember all of the strategies that the final strategies that we've adopted.
Well, and we wrote them, we fine-tuned them, we still can't remember them all either. So we're at the way you completely understand. But so you make a good point. I'll back up. I'll keep this on, but I'll back up for a second. So on March 1st of this Wednesday, we are going to provide the public an opportunity to comment on all of the draft strategies. I think there will be either 4 or 5 mini questionnaires for the public to comment on, and you all are able to do that as well, right? And once those go live, I do plan on sending out the SAC a full list of draft strategies that it was voted on and had consensus from you all. Currently, they are being finalized right now in the preparation for Wednesday. Just with fine tuning, when I say fine tuning, I mean like wordsmithing, removing grammatical errors, that kind of stuff. So that will be presented to you all as well as the public, and the public is going to have an opportunity to comment on. But to connect it back to what you just said, Steve, understanding the vision statement, how it relates to the goals, the strategies that were discussed. We can have that conversation tonight, but, and then when we put everything together, you can see it all together at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not saying stop the conversation.
Sure.
I'm just saying that that is my personal.
Absolutely. Man, that makes sense. So, and one thing I was trying to do, I was hopeful to, get everything together in one shot, but this is how it kind of played out.
I made too many dramatic mistakes. I'm fixing them on the fly.
But those will be, I'll talk about this again at the very end. Wednesday, at some point, they will go live. I'm going to send out the newsletter with the link, as well as the other outlets will pass that out, and you'll be able for public review and public comment and public opinions. So, yeah.
Eric, I'm not certain, when is this vision statement technically due?
Well, in November, but no, it's no,
Fine.
no, the sooner we can wrap this up, the better. Because I know what we have staff been trying to do these past couple of months has really trying to been able to knock out everything we can in a most efficient way possible to prepare ourselves for the zoning conversation. Because we understand, I think everyone in this room understands the importance of zoning and the impact that it'll have. And we want to make sure when those zoning conversations happen, it's only those zoning conversations. We're not doing a half and half meeting anymore. We don't like we want to make sure the time is used appropriately, efficiently, and effectively. So ideally, if we could wrap this up tonight, that would be great. If not, there will be opportunities to comment on the entire plan. This has got to go through PAB, this is going through council. There's going to be multiple opportunities for you all, as well as anybody, to really finalize their comments and continue comment along the way. So we're not done until council says we're done, right? So just kind of keep that in mind as well.
Sorry, this is hyper specific for me to fixate on, but are there gonna be other county entities besides the PAB who get to look at it?
Other departments?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. Oh, no, sorry, no, the planning advisory.
Oh.
See, that's the one I went there first, but I'm like, there's gotta be another one.
Sorry.
I was like, yeah.
Yes.
I was right there with you.
I'm the secretary for the planning advisory board, so a little bit about that. Usually the plan will get introduced to them. There'll be an opportunity for public comment at the meeting. There's an opportunity for written comments, and then the board deliberates, they offer recommendations, and then hopefully they'll offer an advisory recommendation of approval, and they'll go to county council. Well, there'll be another.
Oh, no, I trust you, and I was just like, why is the?
Yep.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. But yeah, there will be public opportunity, go on from here on, right? So, just keep that in mind. But so ideally, again, if we could wrap this up today, that'd be fantastic, but if not, we can go as we see.
Sorry, I wanted to clarify, is this the one that was presented to us after we all collaborated online, or is this the version that was based on the wordsmithing we did in that meeting?
So this was presented to you at the meeting. This one has no changes.
Okay.
But the next one I'm about to show, if everyone's read this, we've kind of revised it a little bit to reflect. And when you guys are done reading this, the next slide shows the side by side here. We can don't. Well, go ahead.
I'm just like, I said there's a comma inconsistency, but no.
So last time we talked about, there were different words that had different levels of importance for different people, right? And one thing that we kind of always talk about was what's each individual's perspective of what region 4 is, or what definition certain words are, right? So what we try to do as staff is that first line, the character of region 4 is seen through X, Y, and Z. Each person has their own perspective on region 4. Each person has their own perspective of what they see each community being. So without necessarily calling it out, we allow the reader in this vision statement to be able to kind of come up with their own definition with these words. While keeping it broadly specific,
While keeping what specific?
broadly specific. So, I don't know if that's an Eric Ketterling saying thing, so feel free to use that against. Yeah. So if you guys would like to discuss this, or we can,
Eric, I mean, this is exactly what, and I realize how tough vision statements are, but we've talked about congested traffic and multimodal doesn't satisfy that itch.
sure,
The other thing, we've talked a lot about environment. You know, it'd be a big stretch for me to say managing future growth really encompasses environment. So, and that would have then forced me to go back again on a strategy statement and say, okay, it's my vision statement. Do I have enough, if I want to make sure that I'm addressing congested traffic enough, do my vision statement or my strategy statement.
okay.
So, I mean, you can come up with a nice flowery vision statement, everything, but it ought to be backed up by content, what's in the plan.
Well, and that's the thing too, like the vision statement is not a catch-all, right? And it's supposed to be a solid foundation, but that foundation may not, you can add things to it that not necessarily there. So we, based on the conversation we heard, and again, trying to reduce the amount of words. We try to come up with a little bit of everything while still being as related, as connected to what we've heard from you all, the public, and the idea of Region 4 as we could.
Well, if I could, and to Steve's point, so we've got in the new one, in the first part, we have the character is seen through, which, what was that vaguely?
Broadly specific.
Okay, don't know what that means. And then we've got these features. Abundant waterfront access, which if I move into an accessory dwelling unit in Bo's neighborhood, I guess I'll have access to the water. Then good schools, employment, this is stuff we like. And then to Stephen's point, we don't really connect the two. We don't say, and we want to make sure that this plan protects, promotes, enhances our water access, our schools, employment opportunities, et cetera, et cetera.
I can say, I think in a way it kind of does, because I mean, I fully agree that they're just separate statements. The first one really all these wonderful things we have. But I think that first sentence, the first part of the second sentence kind of touches at what you're trying to say. The striving to continually improve the quality of life. And I think that we can all agree that the things in that first sentence are part of our quality of life here in Region 4.
It says the character is seen through those things. It doesn't say these are the parts of, these are the things we value about quality of life that has been created and exists here.
You're different for everybody, so I was thinking you. I like that. I don't like that environment is not mentioned in the new one. I mean, it seems like that's a big piece of what we are appreciating. This is our waterfront, for parks, trails.
Wait, and is waterfront access, is that water access? Or is that access to, like, what is that?
Oh, maybe it's big water access. Water access. Right.
Did we argue that we don't have abundant water access?
I did.
That's.
Public access.
Yeah. There's a difference between the two.
In my training for vision statement, strategic planning, the vision is supposed to be a fairly brief statement of a destination, what we want our county to look like, or our entity Region 4 to look like in 2040. And the only thing to me that really comes close to that is actually the last sentence. With a few tweaks, and we've had some good ideas, the environment. And I like Steve, I think you brought up traffic congestion because it's nowhere else in our strategic planning. Plan 2040.
So I'm hearing, maybe adjust the first sentence to be for parks, trails, recreational places, and natural environment. And then try to figure out a way to maybe add in something about traffic congestion to the last sentence. Any other comments?
And I'd like to take out, I think access should be deleted from the first sentence. Region's abundant waterfront.
Okay.
I also, if I can bring up what might be a dead horse here. To me, the nature of our entire region force, Arundel Park, Arnold, and Pasadena is fundamentally suburban in nature. And a couple of slides back, we had that in the Plan 2040, I think, statement. Do you recall that?
The neighborhood preservation policy area.
Yes, I think so. It's talking about suburban character. So that, to me, that's an overall definition. I mean, to me, you've got urban, suburban, rural.
I agree with you.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of neighborhood preservation policy area in our region. But I think it's important to remember that that wasn't all that we had. We also had the peninsula areas, which tend to be a little bit more like rural. And some of our critical corridor areas that tend to feel a little bit more commercial. So I would encourage you to think about those things in addition to the suburban.
I did.
But I think the part of this, you're talking about the word suburban. I think the word suburban can mean different things to different people. I think that there's a very broad, maybe vague definition of suburban on like in the dictionary, right? I'm not sure, I'm not quoting exactly, but I think it might be something along the lines, just outside of a city, something near a city, something along those lines, right? But it doesn't really necessarily talk about what that community is built up of. Now, to you, John, maybe we are in, suburban 101, like this is what suburban is all over. That's great, but maybe to somebody else, it's not. And that's why I think that first line kind of captures both of those ideas into one. I mean, if you disagree, that's why we're here. We're here having this conversation, so.
I don't see that in first sentence at all, but that doesn't tell me about how, well, we have never really talked about a growth rate either. We've talked about managing future growth. And I can argue, well, does that mean 0.7% like we've been for the last 15 years? Does that mean 1 point something percent the BMC is saying? Or are our group occupied here by people that want zero growth? But nowhere in a Plan 2040 do we talk about what our growth rate is. It's mentioned in volume 2, which is not technically, it's backup, not technically a plan, right? It has no legal standing.
Well, the plan 2040 is not, it's not code, it is a plan,
I understand.
but both volumes go together. They stand together as Plan 2040.
Okay, because I just saw the titles of something like background of volume 2.
There is a lot of background in there, but there's also other information.
I mean, they were adopted together. A lot of volume 2 is actually stuff that's required by the state for us to have as part of our general development.
We decided to give you a succinct volume 1 that you could pretty much carry around. But yes, a lot of required information is in volume 2.
But the growth rate is, it's a table showing what the past growth rate has been. There's nothing, am I correct in saying that there's nothing in Plan 2040 that talks about what our growth rate might be in the future?
The thing I read today said there's no way to control that, really. So, you can plan for it based on the path, but, there's only so much you can control where people are gonna move.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Your growth rate you're referencing is the annual growth rate, is that correct?
Yes,
Not the cumulative over a period of time.
no, that's an annual growth rate.
Just double check.
I'm sorry.
Just double checking.
Oh, okay, yeah. So to me, suburban kind of implies a low growth rate like that, but I understand every one of these terms is kind of specifically general.
And to that point, when I read the last sentence, healthy, livable, and it's all describing community. I saw environmental, I saw transportation, so I thought it was broad enough that in my mind, I think when you read it, you didn't see that, but in my mind, I saw a lot of those things in that wording. So it's not specific, but it's broadly, whatever you described that, I can see that as I was reading it.
I think that's part of the vision statement's general goal, because when if we sit here and hammer out everything that needs to be in there, I mean, we'll write the plan, right? Like that's the vision statement. You're supposed to read between the lines a little bit. The reader's supposed to read between the lines a little bit. And I think, again, this sets the foundation for the plan. And I know strategies will essentially kind of branch off of what or should branch off of what the vision statement is. But again, these three sentences should not and cannot hammer out all the problems and details and issues that the area are facing. This is supposed to just be kind of like starting point of the conversation.
So is throwing environmental in there somewhere, is that not vague enough or too?
Where would you, where would you?
Well, I don't know, maybe environmentally healthy, it is at the end, which I think is guts.
Yeah, the last sentence.
And just, help me out, folks, but environmentally healthy.
Healthy
How
environment.
about managing future growth, preserving environmental features, and achieving a healthy multimodal city? And if you want to get into traffic in there, maybe you can, but I hear what you all are saying about adding environment in there, and I can see that would be very important for Region 4.
Because that
I
might
would be
also
comfortable with
capture
that.
density.
Yeah.
Things.
Managing future growth. Put environmental in there and say multimodal addresses traffic congestion to some extent.
And I just
Is that clear?
Okay, let's see.
Well, I think it could be clear. So the next question would be, what is the next step after this? Because if you went ahead, we're gonna have the environment section, we're gonna have the build section, we're gonna have healthy communities and stuff like that. You can obviously flesh out some of this stuff in those areas. Are we going to be doing that, or are you guys going to be doing that for Region 4?
So, yeah,
We already have done each one of those different areas? No, when you say we did it for Region 4, we did it for the GDP. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, just help me. Right.
About that, one category is from 2040, the healthy economy, healthy communities, built environment, natural environment. We're going to take the strategies that we all discussed last month and put them into those categories so you can see them a little bit better. And they're also going to be lined up with like the goals and policies from Plan 2040, so you can see how the strategies we all talk about build on Plan 2040, and they'll be a little bit clearer.
Okay, but the narrative that precedes all of this. Yes, you say we've done that already?
Well, based upon.
No, I know. It puts context to it, fleshes it out a little bit, so that the strategy makes sense as you go through them, because you gave an overview leading into that.
Yeah.
And I'm not making this up. If I go, we've had some great discussions here recently, discussions that were absolutely necessary. But trying to put context to a Region 4 right now, we absolutely have not done that.
No, I think it's a great point. So as part of the chapters, they're gonna pull a lot from the presentations we had earlier in our Region 4 process, where we had people from Rec and Parks come talk to us, we've had people from schools come talk to us. And so we're gonna pull from those presentations, we're gonna pull data, we're gonna pull from our conversations with you guys, and, we can draft some chapters. To try to center what you're saying, like, yeah, we have these strategies, but what's the context for them beyond Plan 2040? For now.
It's safe to say, at least I hope it's safe to say, the region plan is not gonna be a 200-page document, right? Like, it's not gonna be that intense. It's gonna be specific to Region 4, but it's not gonna be what the GDP is.
Back specifically to what we have right here. I think I can agree with what most people have said, is that last line is kind of where we want to start. Is that right? Everybody agreeing to that? The only thing I don't like about that last line is, I don't know if multimodal is understood by anyone other than us. So I don't know how else we say that, but it just bothers me a little bit.
I think it'll be a definition in our plan. So if anybody reads our vision statement and goes, what does that mean? It's gonna be
Okay,
right
so
there.
they have to go deeper into it to get to it, right? So,
Make sure they read it.
If you're online, pull up that document.
But I think that's a fair point. I think that's something we can kind of play around with, and maybe like healthy, like as we did healthy environment, healthy transit. I don't know, we can, I think that's a fair point.
yeah, I mean, I just would take that last line pretty much, and then the first two sentences, if they can be combined, whittled down a little bit, and maybe throw environment in there as well. I'd be happy with all this.
Or if we were, I mean, this is just a wild suggestion, because it would involve chopping the first two, but if we wanted to do it so that it was like a balanced sentence and we include environment, it could be managing future growth, prioritizing environmental health, and achieving a healthy, multimodal, safe, and livable community for all is the goal for tomorrow.
I'd agree with that.
Are you recommending we just take that last sentence with that addition and make that our business?
That's
That
it.
is my suggestion, but we'll understand if it is not an appreciated suggestion.
Improving the quality of life.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. The word equity in there.
So maybe what we could do is keep that, the last line, and then Emma's addition, revision.
And I have a strong objection to abundant waterfront access because, and it's just, what's that one part in that negotiating thing where it's like the hard stop thing? I register my hard stop because it's not accurate.
That's a goal, not a reality.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's
Oh, we're all gonna.
So to be clear, well, it's access.
Yeah.
Abundant water, technically live on the peninsula, sure, but it's the act.
It's the access. That's my.
No, the X.
Okay.
we kind of missed that boat about 60 years ago. Yeah, that's.
So based on what I've heard, I'm gonna make one more suggestion. I think when you're talking about healthy, safe, and livable community, you may want to pull out multimodal into multimodal transportation network, so it's managing future growth, improving environmental features, achieving multimodal transportation network, and a healthy, safe, and livable community for all.
You have to be in a different.
And that may get more interesting.
We get to react to it.
It's getting better and better.
Pretty close enough that it's each and every.
I understand.
In case my annoying comment wasn't.
No.
heard, we just need- If that is what we're gonna change it to, then there needs to be another verb in front of. Okay.
I think, so for the last one, managing future growth, preserving the natural environment, achieving a healthy and livable community with a multimodal transportation network is the goal for a better tomorrow. And I left out the for all the acts, but it would go.
I think that would be a great first sentence.
Anyone else have opinions on pulling that last one to the top to make it the first sentence?
Come into a consensus. All right.
You want me to reorganize?
If you could do that, that would be
Do we-
great.
Take another look at it.
Go back and forth. Just have it on.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You want to take 5 minutes?
Good morning, and how's it going?
And it's the routes of double.
Yeah,
Right,
They
yeah,
just-
with the pandemic funding,
Oh,
they're able to double, right, ridership.
Oh,
Oh,
like enough of hate space twice.
Yes, for the end.
I'll clear that out later. Thank you. Yeah, so welcome back, everybody. During our break, I tried to capture some of our comments and fit them into here. So we add in comments about the natural environment, about multimodal transportation network. And we moved most importantly, we moved the last sentence up to the top. So give it a read, let me know your thoughts.
I like it.
I think you captured.
Yeah, I'm in.
I'm into.
Fantastic. But I also agree with whoever in the audience that there needs to be a comma after.
Nobody said that. We just say. Okay.
Your English major.
No, well,
I'm with the writer.
yeah, I'm a reading.
Wow.
Change consensus. I
Everybody know their
think we're done. Okay.
Thank you all.
Well, now we want to let the public speak, and that means on the phone and here, right?
If I can really quickly, just run through the date.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, March 1st, this Wednesday, we will be sending out for public review and public comment, the draft strategies that you all have been reviewing the past couple of months. Please send that out to everybody you know. For the more comments, the better, the more work we have to do. So I like the job security. And then with that, we'll take all that information and wrap it up in a nice little bow and hopefully be done with it, right? And then so March 13th, Severna Park in person, this meeting is at 6 o'clock, normal times. All these meeting times are at the 6 p.m. mark. And these will be the zoning conversations, again, in person, as required as I can make, it, right? Like it's gonna be almost, it'll be impossible to really capture those conversations through the Zoom process. So please show up in person and please be prepared to really dive into zoning and really get your hands dirty as possible. All right, and then other than that, that's all I had, and so.
So we want to open it up to the public and invite anyone who wants to make comments about the presentation or ask questions. Maybe we can start with the public. We'll start here and then go to the phone.
For members of the public, the microphone's in the middle of this table, so if you're soft spoken and want to step a little closer. I would appreciate it.
If you want to come up right here, then.
Thank you. Maureen Carr, York, Greater Severna Park Council. One of my greatest concerns is about environmental impact when planning future development. As noted by a couple of people, we certainly have an awful lot of streams, creeks, rivers, and ultimately they all empty into the bay. And ultimately, we have to protect our environment just as strongly as we account for other interests. So that is my primary statement today. Thank you.
Anyone on the telephone want to make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyone else from?
Yeah, we have them. We take it. Is
Oh,
there
you wanna
anybody
do
on
every
the
other?
phone?
Didn't Rick have his hand up?
Yeah, so we're gonna go back and forth. We had a comment in the chat, from, I think it might be Holly, based on the initial.
Yes,
here.
it is on the.
That asked us to please add suburban. I think that was back on the vision statement. I apologize. I not open that. We got,
Anybody else on the phone?
we do have members of the public, I see a raised hand.
You have Q&As out there.
The Q and A's I think I addressed earlier. Those were around holding capacity, sorry, Marky was done. I see Linda Schuett's hand up on Zoom, so I'm gonna hit the allow to talk button. Linda, can you still with us, please? You're free. Linda, if you're still here and still have comment, you can unmute yourself and speak. All right, 1 second. I think the volume's down.
Well, I can barely hear it.
All right, Linda, I think if you could try talking now, you just turn up the volume.
I'm sorry, I don't know what to do.
Oh, we can hear you
There
now. Did you have a comment you'd like to share with the board?
Okay, well, you can always come back to the other people on the phone, but who else here would like to make a comment? Richard Strider, and who wants to talk to us about a project that he would like to advise us about?
Good evening, my colleague Marty Reed and I came at the suggestion of John Spencer. Made a presentation 1 week ago to the Greater Pasadena Council. We want to tell the world about a wonderful project we're working on. I'm a historian, and historic preservationist. 30 years ago, I founded and led a regional historic preservation and cultural group in Greater Washington. Then I became a professor of history at Washington College. 12 there for 30 years, returned in 2019. I live in Pasadena, and now in my retirement, I'm getting back into historic preservation. Down the road from me is a wonderful country store, Corwell, some of you may know it, up in North Severna Park. This gentleman and his wife bought it to save it in 2004. They purchased it because it was under demolition threat. And driving past it many, many times, I noticed one day it was a 1932 Model D Ford pickup truck in front of it. It occurred to me that this building was owned by a hipster who knew what he had. So, on the way to meet him, offered my volunteer services to help restore the building. Want to make it look like this. This is the oldest surviving photograph we have. I believe I have just enough of these for the members of the committee.
Pass it around.
I hope I have.
I have an electronic.
Do you know what year that picture was taken?
We guess that this was taken in 1945. There are cards from the late 30s in it, but I have more specific reasons for thinking so. This store was the creation of two families, the Johnson and the Corwell. In 1945, the Johnson family sold it to the Corwell. And I got this picture from one of the Corwell heirs. So my guess is that someone in the Corwell family took this picture just after the family acquired the building. Anyway, it's going to be a big project. It's not going to be easy. It'll probably span about a half dozen years. This year, I intend to nominate the building to the National Register of Historic Places. This year, we hope to create a nonprofit and friends of the Corwell Historic Group. These are preconditions to apply to Maryland Historical Restoration grant money. We have also talked to officials from Preservation Maryland, statewide nonprofit group. I have succeeded in recruiting one of the best restoration architects in the state, Walter Camus, to oversee the restoration. We're going to do all that. We have something else, as far as I know, there'll be nothing else like it in the county. People who come from miles around. Miles around. Yes. Or, right, one thing that's. Marty. I've heard over and over again the theme that has resounded in my neighborhood. The threat of overdevelopment, also the traffic congestion on Route 648. And in researching the building, establishing the historical context, I learned a lot. I'm still learning a lot about the Baltimore-Annapolis Boulevard created by the General Assembly in 1910, about the old Annapolis Road upon which some of it was superimposed, a road going back to colonial times. That's right. I have received very helpful guidance so far from Darian Beverungan, who I'm sure many of you know, the preservation planner for the county. And she informed me that 20 years ago, back in the 90s, there was a special commission to look at establishing some level of protection for scenic and historic roads in the county. Due to their work, there is some level of protection. I still don't know exactly what. for the segments of Baltimore and Atlas to the west of Ritchie Highway, but to the east, we need to do something about that. Because that was 20 years ago. The work of that commission, is now outdated. We are now in a better position to gain a lot better understanding into lots of things about the history of that fascinating road. All right, bisected by Ritchie Highway, bisected again by Route 100, but the segments that provide this great historic significance. And in ascending order of objectivity, great environmental significance, great scenic significance, great quality of life significance, which leads me to some impending project on what is locally known as the Horse Star Riding Stable, just to the north, across Magothy Bridge Road. Some sort of big project is coming, and people are worried about it, worried for good reason. And they ask what can be done, to have any impact. What could conceivably be done if anything to stop it? Well, we've been talking, that's all. But I've been talking along the lines of historic preservation. Because though I've lived in the county since 1989, I've been busy teaching, across the bay and writing books and so forth. Now I'm getting down to work on local preservation issues, and I am astonished that there is no preservation ordinance as such in this county. No preservation master plan, no historic preservation commission with members, with proper credentials, nothing like that. That's amazing because in the area where I was working, Greater DC, had a preservation law or police power preservation ordinance. And I think it's crazy that Anne Arundel County doesn't. So we will be seeking a meeting with County Executive Pittman to share our views about the thing. And for what it is worth, I am just sharing our views with yourselves tonight. Thank you for the kind invitation, John Spencer, and I'll cease intruding upon your time.
Thank you, Mr. That was just inside. Do we have anybody on the phone? Is the phone working?
I think that it's working. It was, Linda said that they couldn't hear us too well. So I'll. So Linda, if you're still with us and still had a comment, you can use the raise hand feature and I'll adjust your settings so that you can unmute if you'd like to provide a few comments. And if anybody else on the call has a few comments that they'd like to say, you can use the raise hand feature. It's under reaction on the Zoom screen.
She's muted.
That's because she has the ability to unmute if they so choose. Going once, going twice for any other comments from people on Zoom. You can use the raise hand feature under reaction. If you have a comment you'd like to share.
Okay, well, I guess we're kind of finished with the phone, but anybody else who's here wants to say something, you're welcome to speak. We finished pretty early. We have. Quiet consensus. Any more business we have?
Not for tonight, the next, and the most of the remainder of the work in front of us is that zoning, the zoning map and the zoning discussion, so. We did pretty good tonight.
I just want to say, just something I've noticed. Everybody wants to manage growth. Nobody knows how. And so, I just want to say, I've talked to them before. We all want to manage growth, but it's not easy. And a lot of.
It wasn't, but there's not a clear way for predicting growth, and I think that that's really great, like indicator for like, yeah, you can try to manage it all you want, but it's kind of this other.
Well, some people have put actual numbers. I think one of the counties, I don't know, it said we'll take 1% of growth 50 years. the first 10 years, and they got it all in the first spot. I think there's a lot of political problems, and then council changed, and they came back to one weekend.
No, I was just, the growth thing and like how we're gonna predict. And what we've seen just kind of out of the blue with the COVID readjustments and the fact that the malls are now derelict properties, but they're partially. And the way household sizes, we've got my accessory dwelling unit, and you're back, but maybe there's only one person living in the house. And one person in the ADU, so. But they've got 3 cars.
Thank everybody. Next meeting, we're trying to get everybody present.
Serena Park, 6 P.M. In person, March 13th. And again, I will send the agenda ahead of time. But just this is our meeting schedule. Again, all these meetings are at 6 P.M. And then do your best, make it in person if possible.
This is.
Need a motion to adjourn?
My family. Oh, yeah. Highly.
What in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Aye. But.